This episode of the Heart to Heart Chat series is about the influence that people can have in shaping our attitudes, our beliefs, and the way we react to situations. Hi, this is Vasudevan, author of Follow Your Heart, Your Brain is Stupid. This channel is dedicated to those who wish to take charge of their lives and to create for themselves a life of freedom, joy, and happiness. In this episode, Shankar shares with us the influence that his father and his grandfather had on him as he was growing up and how it helped him in his business as well as in his relationships. Watch this episode till the very end as Shankar reveals his secret to being happy always. Let's get started. Hi, Shankar. Welcome to my podcast, Shankar, and thank you very much for accepting my invitation. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Vasu. I mean, the pleasure is mine too, for our relationship, how close we are as, classmates in BITS Pilani. And I mean,
Yes.
I can really count on you to be one of my closest friends and probably the only person in the world who knows me better than most people in the world do. So it's truly an honor, Vasu, because
Yeah, absolutely. I am blessed to have you in my life, Shankar. So viewers, we have with us a very successful entrepreneur. He is a batchmate of mine from BITS Pilani, and he's more than a brother to me, right? And all through our stay at the hostel, we have been sidees, which means we always shared adjacent rooms in the hostel, right? All through our stay there. And there is nothing that Shankar doesn't know about me, and it's vice versa. And we met first time when we were in the bus. He was with his father, I was with my father. We were traveling from Delhi to Pilani for doing the joining formalities at Pilani. We struck a chord immediately, right? And Shankar is the same enthusiastic and super excited self, just like his father, to this day. And we have been in touch all through. So let me add, Shankar is a very accomplished ghazal singer. He'll talk about it when I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. Shankar, over to you, and please very briefly share about your journey from childhood to what you are doing today. And then we will delve into some specific areas which I want to talk about. Let's get started. Over to you, Shankar.
Yeah, I was born in a small home in Trichur in Kerala. At that time when I was born, my father was working as a stenotypist with the cement company, ACC. My father was a real go-getter, and of course, as soon as I was delivered and I was born, I moved back to Hyderabad where my father was working, did my schooling there. My father took up to business that time and had a phenomenal childhood. My father became very successful very quickly. It was a very steep rise to success, had a great upbringing. And then, within high school, I realized I could also do a little bit of singing. After schooling, that's the time when my father went bankrupt. And he said that it's time to get the children away from this scene. So the best way you could do that was to get me admitted to a college outside home. So we got admitted into BITS Pilani. And that's where I met Vasu for the first time. A great 6 years together. And, that ecosystem really made me grow tremendously internally, because till then it was a highly protected upbringing with my parents and grandparents, very high lifestyle, playing tennis in the best clubs, traveling in cars everywhere. And then, by the time we reached Pilani, everything was gone, So Vasu, in fact, knew the struggles I went through at that point of time. And but Pilani, education was the only excuse. We had a lot of fun together. And Pilani was a time in which I started singing. The first year in Pilani, of course, Pilani led me to believe that I couldn't sing, because I was booed out during the first year in college. And but then we stayed at it, if you remember, Vasu. I mean, both of us had a good shared interest in music. And Pilani, it just breezed through, Education was only an excuse. And by the time I got out of Pilani, I had become a full-fledged, accomplished professional ghazal singer. And my father was such an adventurist, he said, okay, anyone can become an engineer, Shankar, but you're doing well. And then, Pilani's biggest gift to me was when I participated in the All India Radio Music Competition, which was the only reality show that time in 1980, in the early 80s. And stood first in that music competition, decided to take up music as a career. But campus interviews came in the way, and my father was bankrupt. He still remained bankrupt. Every year he said this is going to be his comeback year, but it never happened. And then when the campus interviews came by, I got 3 jobs, and then, like everyone else did, I took up a job, and I took up a job because that would mean getting my family out of the mess that we were in that time, because everything had gone by then, But my father was extremely disappointed that I didn't take up music. So I joined a British multinational called ICI, worked with them for a decade. And my father was still, even though I joined ICI, our family's finances became immediately okay. He was very keen. So then he got me married to a very accomplished musician, Sangeeta. Sangeeta is a violinist by profession. She is the daughter of Padma Bhushan Dr. N. Rajam, a very, very highly decorated violinist. And my dad's only objective to get me married to Sangeeta was that somehow it would get me back to music.
Okay.
But that didn't happen. And I started climbing the corporate ladder very quickly. The affluence came in. And my heart was in music, but my brain was in the job. I mean, always reminded of Vasu's book, whenever I meet him and talk about him, because it's a great, phenomenal book, and what he says rings so true, So, married Sangeeta, blessing in my life, And actually, when I married Sangeeta, we have a large family of relatives. But, Vasu came all the way from North India. He was working somewhere in the north, but he came all the way for the wedding. And he was the best man in my wedding, sitting to my right throughout the wedding. You remember that, Vasu?
I know.
So, it was such a lovely period, Even my cousin flew in from the US, but you were the best man at my wedding. I remember that. So, and then, but then the affluence started coming in. I started growing up in position. But my father didn't give up. Sangeeta joined him, and with the result that, 2 albums came up with, which are now owned by Sony Music. One was recorded by Magna Sound, and one was recorded by CBS Records and Tapes. Both are available on YouTube right now. One is on ghazals, and one is on bhajans. Did that, and and then subsequently, I moved jobs. It was almost a decade with ICI. Then I moved into Reliance. Spent the next decade there. But during my stint in Reliance, I got the opportunity to get involved in a business that me and my wife built, and that went on to become a very, very large distribution network running into several crores in sales that happened over the last 25, 26 years. And music went into the background, Somehow it was not as if I didn't want music in my life, but, many a time we think that we are in control, but life just evolves, and it's better to go in with the flow. And the business gave us a lot of pleasure, and what happened as a result of building that business was I was actually moonlighting with the business for the first 4 years along with my job in Reliance. And then it grew up in scale and size, and it became a very, very stable retail distribution network, and I could move out of my full-time job, and I've been leading a pretty good life for the last 22 years full-time in the business. And Sangeeta has also moved on through her career and became very accomplished. We've got 2 daughters, Ragini and Nandini Shankar. Both are accomplished violinists now. Ragini is a mechanical engineer. Nandini is a chartered accountant. Both are grown up. Nandini is married to a very accomplished musician called Mahesh Raghavan, who plays Carnatic music fusion on the iPad. Nandini is a classical violinist. So they make a great combination. So life has been very, very rewarding, and I owe everything to a lot of things. I'll get to speak up. If I get a chance, I'll get to speak about it in the later part of this today's podcast.
Right. Thanks, Shankar. I think because I know all these details, but it was very important for our viewers to know about your journey, right? So, Shankar, my question to you is: as we grow up, most of us, we get influenced by either it could be people, or it could be some incidents in our lives. So in your life, were there anybody who had a major impact on the way you think, the way you react to situations, and your general belief systems? Were there somebody?
Actually, actually my very strong influence from my grandparents, and
Okay.
my grandfather was a strict disciplinarian. He was actually a music teacher in a school in Kerala,
Okay.
and
Mm.
he was extremely poor, and through very difficult times he came up, raised three children. My father was the eldest, and then when my father got employed, you know, within a couple of years of him getting employed, my grandfather was in such poor circumstances that my father moved him with him in Hyderabad and told him to retire from his job. My grandfather was hardly 50 years old at that time, and he was very fit. And so I was born into a family where my parents were there, my two elder sisters were there, and my grandparents were there with me. And my father, as soon as I was born, he was busy building his empire.
Right.
And my mother was busy supporting him. So my grandfather and grandmother had a very, very strong influence, particularly my grandfather. He was a no-nonsense disciplinarian, but with me, he saw a very meek grandson, meek and compliant grandson. I mean, I did not give him a hard time at all.
Okay.
And with the result that, he was extremely loving. He couldn't tolerate even the slightest harm coming to me. He'd even write letters to the teachers in school that my grandson shall not be beaten, and please, if you need to beat him, please let me know before you beat him. I'll fix him. So nobody had the right to discipline me except him, and he did that through a lot of love and unconditional love and such loving care. And then see, normally when you love someone very well, you get compliance completely.
Right.
You notice it that whenever you love somebody unconditionally and you care and you reach out. That's what my grandfather did with me. And he was very, very strongly steeped in good values. He needed me to study. He put me on a very good routine. He did not allow me to play the normal games that children played, like chor police and kabaddi and all those kind of games. I didn't play. I went play sophisticated games like billiards and tennis in a good club. So that my grandfather in fact wrote letters to my PT teacher in school that my son shall not get participated in the PT period. Please make him sit in the classroom. So I was not allowed to. So I had special permission to not go in for PT, because I was doing sports outside. So I didn't hurt my shins. It's a highly protective existence. And Vasu had seen that raw facet of me when I walked into Pilani. If you remember Vasu.
Yes.
That absolutely raw facet of mine when I got into Pilani. But that influence was very strong, So wherever my relationships flowered, they tended to become very intense, with people. That included Vasu, people like Vasu, my wife, my children, and now the large community that we are a part of, So very strong bonds, and it's very, very difficult for me to not get emotionally involved with someone with whom I'm close. So that, I think, that thing comes from my father, and what that creates is a very strong engagement and an environment of trust, and that also led me to become a very, very doting father to my children. And I somehow believe that my kids are completely maintenance free. They just grew up organically. It is just as if just planted seeds and then you don't have to tend the seeds. It just grows organically in the right environment. So because of what my grandfather, the way he treated me, I guess that created a very caring person inside me, and that kind of rubbed off into my personality. And then, as I started growing, I saw my father becoming successful as an entrepreneur, and the lifestyle that he had as an entrepreneur, the choices that he had. And one of the greatest qualities of my dad was, that Vasu knows him. Vasu has seen my father several times, met him several times. Extremely positive human being, And that positivity, in fact, he commercialized polyurethane foam in India for the first time. He was a pioneer in selling polyurethane foam. It's now a household name. It's there in every single home. Polyurethane is there right today. But my father introduced it to the country. It was well ahead of its time. Extremely difficult to sell in a market which was completely cotton that time. So getting affluent households to move from cotton into polyurethane foam, and he made a big success out of it. But unfortunately, my dad didn't have a mentor, and but he was extremely positive. I didn't have a mentor, got into bad habits, and those remained with him for some time. But what also remained with him was his positive attitude, which rubbed it to me, And no one in this position would have put me into BITS Pilani, because Pilani was known to be a very expensive engineering institution that time. Even it is today, but even that time it was a very expensive engineering institution, and we didn't have money to even make our ends meet that time. And my father, everybody told my dad that you shouldn't put your son in Pilani. My father said the only reason I should put my son in Pilani is my present condition. How would I remedy if I don't do anything positive? And he said, we'll make it somehow. And Vasu has seen me going through those struggles that time, during college. But it was worthwhile, because my father said one more thing. Once I put you into Pilani, Shankar, I can't take you out. We'll figure out a way to get you through. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And it is not as if he had it all figured out, as to how he's going to pay my fees. He was not a logical thinker at all. He was zero brain. He was all heart. In fact, he just studied only till high school, so he didn't have much tools to exercise his brain also. You need a degree like engineering to get analytical, and then use analysis to rule your life. A surest prescription for remaining broke is to remain completely analytical.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. In fact, that's what I've also talked about in my book. The more analysis you do, you'll end up in that paralysis, that analysis-paralysis thing. And it's a brain which will always stop you from doing things which you want to do, which is different from your normal, right? It will always stop you. And this is what we don't realize it. And it's not that you should become absolutely foolhardy and take them decisions, but it is important to understand what's the role of the brain and the mind, so that you take the right decisions in life. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So basically, so later on when the opportunity came, my job in Reliance was extremely good. I got very rapid promotions. In fact, I became its youngest general manager in my mid-30s, doing very well. Company-owned house, company-owned car, the works. And, but I didn't have any time for my beautiful wife and kids, So I was thinking that how long this is going to continue like this for the rest of my life. I was doing 14-hour days for 6 days a week. And that's when an entrepreneurial opportunity came into my life. And we, both me and Sangeeta, would jointly get engaged with it, and we dived into it, and we went on to create, worked really, really hard with a full-time job and moonlighting with this opportunity. And then, the entrepreneurial bug also was because of my dad, And when I got involved in the business, my greatest cheerleader was my father. He said, Shankar, you are doing the right thing, because this will get you out of these 14-hour days that you're running right now. And he was my greatest cheerleader, not only when I got involved in business, but when I made the choice to go full-time after 4 years. He was the guy who egged me into the most and saying, Shankar, take the plunge, I am with you.
I very clearly remember your father was always very excited and totally confident. It'll rub off, and it has rubbed off on you. I can see that, right? So
that's right.
Go ahead.
And 30 years, 35 years, Vasu. My father went bankrupt when he was 50 years old. He was up till 85. 35 years, at least for 32 years out of those 35 years, he was always charting his comeback story. And what gave him happiness was the anticipation in his comeback story. He never came back. But what kept him happy was anticipation, hope. I see so many people who destroy their present because they have no hope. And hope doesn't need a thing. Basically, hope has to come from somewhere very deep within. It can't be based on circumstances. Faith is also a similar thing. Faith is like a muscle. It has to be, and you have it, and if you have it, you can develop it over a period of time. My father taught me so much about faith. And so I use those qualities to leverage and take the plunge into entrepreneurship. And it is those very qualities, Vasu, which also helped me to make the next major decision in my life, which is something which confronted me 7 years back,
Yeah, in fact, I was wanting to ask you about that, because about 7 years ago, you went in for a heart valve replacement surgery, and all through that thing, you remained cool and unfazed, because normally what happens is anybody, when they hear about something to do with the heart, they get psyched. They become fearful, they get terrified. But you were very different. You remained cool. You went through that whole procedure, and when today you are cycling 15 kilometers a day. So I wanted you to very briefly tell us about what happened when you first were diagnosed, or first you were told that you need to undergo that surgery. What went on in your mind, and how did you go about that? Yeah.
Actually, when I walked out of my job in Reliance in 2002, that time I went for a medical checkup, free medical checkup through a credit card, with a very reputed hospital in Mumbai. And there, the cardiologist who checked me and said, "You have a systolic murmur in your heart will need surgery."
Okay.
And somehow that was very early. I was in my early 40s, and I was not ready to take that input. So it was a big medical checkup in the hospital. But as soon as that doctor finished his checkup, I ran away from the hospital. I didn't complete the remaining part of the medical checkup also.
Okay.
So, and I came and met my cardiologist. We had an associate in our business who was a cardiologist, and he checked me up and said, "Shankar, there's nothing to worry. Sometime later in life, you will need an interventional procedure to get your heart valve replaced." So this was way back in 2002. That I completely forgot about. And he said that this is something that you didn't create. You're born with this kind of a defect, and this will need intervention later on in life. And then, in 2017, during another routine medical checkup, the cardiologist who checked me up told me, "Now it's probably time for you to go through the procedure." And it had faded away in my memory, so I did not think I'd ever need cardiac surgery. But fortunately, when the doctor checked me up in 2017, I was completely asymptomatic. Of course, initially I won't say that I didn't go through the why me period. Why should I have this issue? Why should I need surgery? And then, but that didn't last very long, because again, seeing my father going through struggles and overcoming, so I realized that there's no use in being in despair. We'll have to start doing something about it. But my cardiologist, what he told me when he first examined me in 2017 was that you're not ready for surgery as yet. You'll have to start developing symptoms. So I was waiting for some time for symptoms. And through that period of waiting for symptoms, I studied the subject completely. And I was wondering which is the way in which I can go through this procedure with the least amount of trauma and the best outcome. I realized that, abroad, this heart valve replacement surgery. By the way, heart valve replacement surgery is the only true open heart surgery. Heart valve replacement surgery and heart transplant surgery. Bypass surgery is not open heart surgery. It is open chest surgery. You don't open the heart. But in a valve surgery, it's very serious. You actually cut the pericardium and the aorta, which are big component. The pericardium is the external muscle which holds the heart. So I spent time in studying it, and engineering degree in Pilani helped in studying this study, And then I decided to go to the US for the procedure, where I could go through an endoscopic cardiac replacement procedure, cardiac valve replacement procedure. And then, I was just wondering, okay, we can get it done there, but, who will do the follow-up? And subsequently, I was looking for local options. And I came across this surgeon in Bangalore, Dr. Satyaki Nambala. I mean, he's almost next to God in our life right now, because I found the guy through a YouTube search. And I didn't ask anyone. I listened to his YouTube video on how he does heart surgery. And I told Sangeeta, this is the guy who is going to operate me. And then I just picked up a flight. We went to Bangalore, got myself again exam, took a second opinion from Dr. Devi Shetty at Narayana. He said I should go into surgery electively immediately, because the cardiologist in Bombay was waiting for a cardiac event before I underwent surgery. But the Bangalore team said, the Narayana Hridayalaya team said, you're better off doing it electively rather than waiting for an event. So it was done, and because of I opted for an endoscopic cardiac procedure. A fantastic doctor, tremendously principled, and he said, you can walk away from this procedure and take just a normal flight and go back home. You won't need a wheelchair in the airport, and you can go back home and do what you like, drive cars, do everything, and give yourself a couple of weeks before you go back to the gym, but you can do everything else immediately.
Wow.
So, it was a leap of faith also. And again, that faith muscle is completely from my dad.
Shankar, I think what I could understand from what you had shared with us is that the two people who really had a major impact on your life, on the way you think and do things, was one was your grandfather and the other one was your father. What would be a few messages that you like to leave with our viewers?
Yeah, basically, if you are in charge of what's happening in your life right now, if you're running a household, there's
Mm,
tremendous value unity in family, keeping your
mm,
family united, remaining tight with your parents, remaining tight with
mm,
your wife and children, keeping the family at the center of your life. I mean, that's a great Indian tradition which has got tremendous value, and that's the only thing which actually saw us through all the adversities which we were faced with in the early part of my life.
mm,
Second thing is love unconditionally. I mean, it doesn't require anything to love unconditionally. You don't need money for it. It's just a decision that you just learn how to unconditionally love people. That is what my father and grandfather were all about.
mm,
Unconditional love, and using unconditional love as a means to getting what you want in life. So my grandfather wanted a certain behavior in me, and his way of getting that was unconditional love. Compliance is very easy when you have unconditional love. The next one is, uh, if you want to really make progress in life, you got to choose the uncharted path. There's no point in going the beaten track, particularly if you are engaged in a profession or a job which is only providing you a living and you don't like what you're doing. Then you've got to choose something. You've got to go off the beaten track. The next one is when you get into entrepreneurship, that will really test your ability to stay persistent and consistent and never give up. I saw my father charting his comeback story for 35 years. He never came back. But his ability to come back each time after a setback, and so that helped me, stood me in very good stead in my entrepreneurial ventures also. And the other thing is that, always be happy throughout. My father was unconditionally happy. Nothing could faze him, and happiness, has to be the source and everything else has to be the outcome. It cannot be that outcomes drive happiness for you. That way you will never be happy. You got to learn how to be unconditionally happy. Also, it's a given that if you have life, there will be setbacks and adversities. But can you remain happy through them? Because if you remain happy through them, you can look forward and move on. Because I can never see anybody moving on out of unhappiness. You can only move on out of happiness. Happiness doesn't reason. And if you want to learn more about the subject, go back to last week's episode by Vasu on being happy. And lastly and most importantly, follow your heart. The brain is logical, and particularly if you're an engineer or gone through a professional degree, it will make you very analytical.
You had it. You had it.
Yeah, you had it. So these are typical takeaways, Vasu. It was real pleasure talking to you and to your community today. And we really hope that together this can make a difference for a lot of people's lives. Thank you, Vasu.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, viewers. Wasn't that an amazing learning from Shankar's journey? I hope you have noted down these points, because just watching a chat show and not doing anything about it, it is of no use. It's a waste of time, right? So make sure that you note down these things, and wherever applicable, you apply it in your lives. Because these are very similar situations that all of us will face, and that's the whole purpose of this chat show, where I feature people who I feel would give a lot of value, which we can all relate to and implement in our lives. In the comment section, I would love if you can post 1-2 takeaways that you had from this episode. What learning you had from this episode, it'll be great, and it'll help others also. So viewers, if you got some value from this particular episode, do like, share, and consider subscribing to the channel. Shankar, once again, thanks a lot for taking time off. It was a pleasure, and there's a lot of learning. Of course, I knew some of those things, but there were a lot of other things which you have shared, which I was not even aware of. There's a great takeaways for me also. Thanks a lot once again. Bye, viewers. See you in the next.
Appreciate it. All right. God bless.